All right, it is now 5:33 p.m. on Monday, June 22nd, 2026, and I'll call the meeting of the Finance Committee of the Village of Lake Bluff Board of Trustees to order. Clerk, please call the roll.
Member Fisher,
Here.
Member Renner,
Here.
and Chair Ryder.
Here.
A quorum.
Okay. First order of business is approval of the minutes from our last meeting, which was March 30th, 2026. The minutes are there in the packet. Did anyone have any questions?
None for me.
No.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve the minutes of the March 30th meeting?
So moved?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion passes. Minutes of the meeting from March 30th are approved. Moving to the next order of business, we have two major orders of business on today's Finance Committee meeting. The first of which is about a request for a sales tax rebate agreement, and that's written up.
Chair Ryder, the non-agenda items are called.
This is what I try to do when I go off script. This is what happened. I was just scrolling.
My fault.
No. I'm just scrolling through the packet. Time out. We're going back to the last agenda item, which was Finance Committee allocates 15 minutes at this time for those individuals who would like the opportunity to address the committee on any matter not listed on the agenda.
There's no one online either.
Thanks.
Sorry.
Thanks for making that correction then. That was nick of time.
Necessary, just in the nick of time.
Okay, now to the business items for A and B. First is a discussion regarding the potential sales tax sharing agreement. Move to that section of the packet, which begins on page 6. Drew, would you like me to go through this, or would you care to go through the memo?
Whatever you prefer.
Okay.
I'm happy to do an overview, or you're welcome to as well.
Okay. Why don't you go ahead?
Okay. So I won't, everybody hopefully has read the memorandum, but the village has a history of doing sales tax rebates, certainly with auto dealerships. Most of them have been involved in attracting new dealerships to facilities. There was a key one years ago back with Canals, bringing them into town. But also the village did one with Summersky, which at the time was a Saab dealership. It's ultimately the Chevy dealership now, but it was a Saab dealership. Interestingly, they never got over the minimum threshold. So the village, even though we had an agreement on that property, we never ended up sharing. But certainly the village did with the Target deal. That has recently closed out, having lasted the 10 years. And if you remember, it was the sooner of 4.2 million or 10 years, and it went the whole 10 years. But in a similar arrangement to what Ziegler is asking the village to consider is 50-50 sharing. And whereas the village on this particular site would capture the first 30 million floor, that would be all village, and then above that, the village would share up to 600 million. And then above that, we would split 50-50. A couple of different projections in the packet. One of those was provided by the dealership in terms of, I guess we consider that pretty aggressive in terms of growth, and had a different, slightly less aggressive numbers. But the goal was to try to figure out if this ran the full time, what would that, in terms of total rebate, look like? What they're asking for is to recapture their investment, some planned investment in site. They've actually already spent $500,000 since they've taken over the dealership at the property, but there's a Pagani dealership built out at 2.4 and a Ferrari mandated update to their facility and branding improvements that they won't know to what that looks like at 2029, but they've indicated that they would not expect to get anything back further than those improvements. And that the village would have an ability to check what those dollar investments are through our building permit process. the sooner of that number or 15 years is what they were asking for. Over the last several weeks, we've gone back and forth and they seem to be agreeable to all the traditional policy considerations and provisions that the villages look for in these types of rebate agreements, to include a maximum cap, a clawback provision. The actual language that we've discussed has been not unlike what the villages had, where if they leave within 5 or 7 years, then it's 100% back. If they stick around, then it's reduced to 75%. So it's kind of, it draws down over time. And again, of course, they have the minimum threshold to reach of 30 million before sales starts. Sales tax will be shared, and then the performance thresholds of actually doing the investments within a certain time frame. So they again seem agreeable to all those, and so the question is the village interested in pursuing this? And then I can go back and work with them on the final deals and details and bring that back maybe to you all, maybe to the village board in the shape of a final agreement. And happy to answer any questions.
I have a few questions. When you refer to the $30 million floor in the memo, that's the total sales, which would equal 300,000
Correct.
in sales tax.
Correct.
So their 30 million floor is equivalent to our 300,000 sales tax. And before any rebate kicks in, we would get that amount, 300,000, before any amount that they get back. What is the 300,000 based upon, or the 30 million floor based upon? I think I understand it to be roughly based on what their historical sales have been at that location? Or is there some other way that we came up with that number?
We are limited in what we can talk about pursuant to an agreement with the Department of Revenue.
I see.
That we shouldn't be talking about any specific sales tax generators numbers.
I see. Okay.
But that number is in the, for example, using the Saab dealership, that $10 million threshold was probably aspirational for them. I think there's a level of confidence that the 30 million is a safe number.
Wait, safe as in?
They're likely to sell that much
Yes,
and more.
a little more.
Yes.
Right, but the nice part is if they have, like when we did Target,
Yeah.
if they have a bad year, let's say we enter a great recession again and they have a bad year, although luxury car dealers tend to do well no matter what the economy is doing. We grab the first round of sales tax up front.
And that's what, again, looking at the Target example, when the village set that minimum threshold, that was, there was, I think, some hand-wringing over how much the threshold would be set at, and the village set that above the best year the Chevy dealership, the former Shepherd Chevrolet, ever did. And so that the village always felt like we were always better off. In this situation, it's a little different. This, probably the biggest limiting reagent I've learned for luxury automobiles is the production of the vehicles themselves, right? When you think about like Koenigsegg and Paganis are almost all bespoke vehicles. And so they can only hand make so many cars a year. The biggest part of this may be exotic used vehicles, which still generate sales. That they may be able to bring a lot more to the table than previously. But they have reason to think that things are looking good and will continue to look good or better. So I think if they sell a lot of cars, we benefit, they benefit.
Roughly speaking, if we stop collecting taxes from this location at 300,000 in a given year, we aren't going to see a dip in sales revenue from what we've experienced in the past, or sales tax revenue from what we've experienced in the past. I appreciate that you maybe can't speak broadly to this, but this is in rough terms.
In rough terms,
The goal is to maintain, not lose
yeah,
ground.
we would be comfortable that they would make the number and we would be okay.
All right,
Sorry.
all right.
Sorry.
It's all right.
Yeah.
I don't want to make
Yeah.
any mistakes here. Okay, so that's where the $300,000 number where it comes
We had a
from.
conversation with their finance manager, and we looked at what we've seen.
I see. And so we're comfortable with that number. Then from 300,000 to 600,000, it shifts to the rebate period, right? 100% rebate. And then after 600,000, then it shifts back to
50-50
50-50 sharing.
Did we say there's a cap? Or are we considering a
The cap
cap?
is the total improvements that they do there. Right now, it's in the neighborhood of 6 million. It may be less. They just really don't know what the Ferrari's gonna require. They'll know that in about 3 years.
Okay.
So it wouldn't be a cap in any given year, it would be a cap after total. And I guess the other thing that popped out when I was looking at the 6.9 million that is estimated there is that amount is just that, an estimate.
Yes.
So the amount that we are going to allow them to recoup is not going to be set in stone now, but instead is going to be dependent upon how much they invest.
Invest in the site.
Okay. So the third bullet there, where it says additional capital already invested into the acquisition of the property, would be in that list, more, in addition to the 6.9, if I'm reading correctly, the first few bullets, approximately 2.4 for the dealership build-out, approximately 4.5 for the Ferrari mandated facility, and then third bullet, I don't want scope creep here. I don't want that $500,000 that they've, I don't know, realtor fees, I don't know, they paid that
Oh, it's been
$500,000 to.
improvements on the facilities toward the Pagani dealership, actually.
2.4 though is what the,
I
so
think
there's another
more to
$500,000.
come. Yeah, I think there's another
Okay,
tranche to come.
okay. So the 6.9 is what's in front of us, but it could be, I don't want to see that number grow,
Yeah.
if at all possible. And it feels to me like, depending on what Ferrari demands, it might well be lower than that.
This is true, yeah, and we can work through the language on that and tie it to building permits for certain activities.
Okay, that would be good. And certain activities, to my way of thinking, not to be certain future activities, not activities that
Yeah.
have already been undertaken.
Well,
But
they wanted to look back to January 1, I think, to include at least the $500,000 that they put in so far, you know, that the idea, and that's, seems reasonable.
Unfortunately or fortunately, estimates of renovations rarely come in on budget.
Right, well, right. All right, so going back to
January 1,
January 1, okay. Are those?
this year, 2026.
Those, are they, they're in business during the renovations, right? And
Yes.
Continuing to sell?
Yes.
Okay. All right. That was, those were my questions.
Yeah, and I think you all know that dealerships are expected, I would almost say mandated, to make periodic improvements to their dealerships. And for example, the Jaguar dealership that recently closed, the owner had acquired another piece of land down the street and was prepared to build a whole new building because it would be less expensive than knocking down or trying to make work what he had already there, which is shocking how much, you know, was being asked of them, but that happens pretty frequently, so.
Yeah, anyone else have any questions, or what's the next step for us? Will we see the agreement before it's finalized? What happens
That's up
next?
to you all. I think, you can talk about that now if you want to see it. If it's basically these terms, if you're comfortable with it going to the village board, I can work with Peter Freeman to draft that up and we can bring it to the full board, or we can bring it back to the finance committee.
It does at least go to the full board, though. right?
100%, that would the board authorize.
I don't know that it needs to come to the finance committee.
Now, as long as we've agreed on these general terms, we'll get a chance to comment if there's issues
see it,
again on
yes.
the village
At the
board.
village board, that makes sense to me.
So then it would be looking for a recommendation to enter into the agreement with similar business terms and that be directed to the village board.
Is that a motion or is that
It would be a motion for you guys, the committee.
so?
A motion for a recommendation.
Recommend the village board authorize a sales tax rebate agreement with Ziegler, subject to the preparation of an agreement with the village attorney and the village administrator that will be brought for the village board.
Do I have a motion along those lines?
So moved.
And a
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. No one's opposed. That motion carries. Oh,
I'd like to commend Drew for getting these forward to us, because when you started, that was a lot more dire and a lot more rocky before we got to this agreement, so thank you.
Yep,
And
thank
to
you.
Bettina.
Yeah, thank you.
I did have one question. So we had a timeline. What is the timeline for the first opening event? Ribbon cutting on the facility?
On the Ferrari dealership?
Yeah.
They've been open and running.
So they're doing ongoing
They're doing these
renovations
improvements,
while they're selling?
yes.
Wow, okay. I didn't know that.
Now, I think TBD with the Ferrari, what happens with that, right? You know, but
Okay.
senior housing?
one moment. Okay, having nothing further on that item of business, we'll move to the next one, which is a discussion regarding availability of an upcoming program project in Lake Forest in which we may, as a village, decide to participate. So I think today's purpose of our discussion is to gather as much information as we can about this proposed project, about what role village could play in the project, what it might do for us and for our citizens, and how it might help us or not comply with our various obligations for affordable housing. So lots of questions, and I've been told that we'll have all the answers at the end of this.
Not true.
All this, not true. Yeah, I haven't been told that. But I certainly welcome some background, Drew, for us.
This, and Paul Lemieux is here, and Paul, you want to introduce yourself? I think you know, you,
Hello, Paul.
I lived at 560 Evanston, and when I was on the village board, I served as a representative to the senior center. At that time, the village board appointed secretary, I didn't do that anymore. I went on to serve on the Senior Resource Commission through 2012 or 13, and termed out as the president, vice president of the foundation, and I'm currently its treasurer.
Terrific. Thank you for being here, Paul. I appreciate
Yes,
it.
thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
but this is an opportunity that the village has been talking about for as long as the city of Lake Forest has been trying to figure out a way to add to their inventory of affordable housing, this specifically involving seniors. They've had other affordable housing programs. They were, I think, smart in the 08 downturn to acquire some single-family homes, detached single-family homes that they've have converted into, I'll call attainable workforce housing, that you can acquire within certain income limits. And when you sell, you can enjoy some of the equity, but the house stays within a certain defined income levels. And that, I think, window may have closed and may not come back in terms of affordability. And they took advantage of the downturn in the marketplace and had money on hand to take some action. They have an inclusionary ordinance where new developers coming in to do projects have to produce a certain number of units or do a payment in lieu of. And Highland Park has a similar type. That's a pretty common model. Lake Forest has never, Lake Bluff has never done that, taken that step as part of its affordable housing initiatives. But one of the things that has been talked about, and it is in the current affordable housing plan, is this maybe taking advantage of this, we call it the Lake Forest Senior Cottage Project. And that has been getting attention again. The city was approached by the state saying, hey, now may be a good time to ask for credits for your project. They did, and then they were told, I think, softly, I don't think it's gonna work. But they'll know definitively by the end of this month. And part of it, I think concern has been the cost per unit is still fairly high in the state's eyes, but they're still trying to cobble this together and has been looking for investors in Lake Bluff. The village has been a potential investor and has kicked this around for years, as long as the project's been kicked around. And one of the reasons is this may be a way for the village to help tackle the complex issue of affordable senior housing. And obviously Lake Bluff is much smaller than Lake Forest, and so our availability of a footprint to do that within is much more challenged than Lake Forest is, and so they have more opportunities and more economies of scale. So to piggyback on that and maybe get access to these new units and potentially even existing units has been talked about. And so the size of the investment will dictate the amount of return on that, whether that be, a priority level that was talked about in the memorandum. But one thing it's been clear is that it doesn't guarantee anything. Even if the village went out and and said, we want to contribute and buy a unit per se, but that you would have to have a Lake Bluff resident in line, ready to go to get into one of those for us to get that prior. If it wasn't so, then they would go to the next person who is on the list. That doesn't mean that value of that may transfer to another existing unit, the next unit that may be not the unit we bought per se, but all that detail will need to be worked out with Lake Forest, and those types of conversations, in-depth parameters have not been set. This has been more conceptual thus far, and I wanted to make sure you all were aware of this, that it was happening, that this opportunity may present itself. And this has kind of gone so far to the back burner. I think we've stopped budgeting for it. We carried a number for years in the budget, a small amount of money, I think 100,000 over the years, and just set aside that as kind of a rainy day. If this manifests itself, then maybe there can be something on the books. Bettina and I talked about that there is, I would call it, a additional funds, that similar scale number that's available, in 2028. Yeah, so, obviously that may work out fine, but if that's the number, and it was 100,000, yeah. So it's been, we've talked about it, it's been carried, but it's never been the scale of this, 650,000, that scale. The village has never, I think the biggest number the village has talked about in the past has been 300,000. But again, time marches on and prices go up. Anyway, that's kind of a high level. I talked to Mr. Lemieux earlier today, and he graciously said he would attend tonight, and maybe he can answer some questions or give more color to what we're talking about. But the idea is this may reappear. The village may want to do this. Over the years, the village board, I've heard various concerns and I'll say support for the project. So the support is obviously the economies of scale are good. How will we ever put together a deal like this? We just saw what happened on Block 3. The cost, unless the village probably, would establish an inclusionary ordinance, it would be difficult for the village to get a developer to agree to do this outside of being required to. Most of the conversations with developers, they're not keen on doing this, and they're very specific projects, have very specific tax credits associated with them. And it's just the scale of that is probably would not be seen by the village. The friction, I think, has come to villages with investing any money outside of our borders. That has been a concern. Some of you may remember there was a senior project talked about in the 10 acres west of the West Terrace several years ago that never
Next to the Jawa plant.
yeah, between the Jawa and the West Terrace.
It wasn't just talked about, there were
No,
plans.
it was very close. There was a
We spent
developer
like a
really
year or two on that.
working through that, and the village kept upping its ante in terms of what it wanted out of the developer, and we had the developer saying, yes, they would do it all the way to the end. But ultimately, the village chose not to do that project. So there are greenfields, so to speak, available. I just randomly looked online. There's a house available that's close to $650,000 on the south side of the village. So the idea is, are there other products that cost similar? I mean, is the village going to get in the business of being an operator? You have to look at those things. But Anyway, those are some of the comments I've heard over the years, and I just wanted to make sure that you all are aware of this, and I will continue working with Kathy Cerniak, the Community Development Director in Lake Forest. She's the project point on this. I suspect she'll go back to the city of Lake Forest and ask for additional funds, which I think there's some available, and their affordable housing fund, and to maybe try to close this gap more if the state shows up with more money or makes it closer to being possible, so.
So, what is in the realm of possible is that we commit $650,000 and we somehow get a designated slot for
Priority for.
right of first refusal of,
Oh, yeah.
maybe Paul can explain this further.
Yeah, so I don't want to, I share your concern about shipping money out of the village, so I don't want to act like I'm immune to that. I think the ante is quite a bit more, quite honestly.
Oh, it is?
Yeah, probably. You're probably talking about 400,000 or so.
Oh, 400, more than it used to be.
Yeah.
400,000.
To get to the end point, if your only objective is to be good neighbors, then yeah, 100,000. But what you should be headed for, I believe, is a couple of things. One is if they build units that, and again, this is going to be for a price, that you are guaranteed a unit right off the bat for an eligible resident, and that the priorities that they set, so there's a set of priorities now, that the priorities be Lake Forest resident first, Lake Bluff resident second, family of Lake Forest resident third, family of Lake Bluff resident fourth, and then there'll be more down below that. The current 5 cottages that are there now only have 2 Lake Forest residents in them.
Oh,
So the likelihood of placing a Lake Bluff resident or the family of a Lake Bluff resident there are good, assuming that people come forward and they qualify. So if all 5 of the existing units were filled with Lake Forest residents, I'd say,
Yeah.
this is kind of dicey, but it's not. The other thing is, just to touch on what Drew said, I was on the village board when Mark Dewar brought the proposal forward for multifamily, and the resistance to it was enormous, overwhelming. I mean, it's not that it didn't get to first base, it didn't get out of the dugout. The community was very opposed to it. There was also a proposal for an affordable housing project on exactly the same piece of property in Lake Forest. And I forget the number of units, had a prominent woman, architect, Lake Forest resident, that designed it. It was wonderful. And there again, the community was in a total lather about it. So, the argument is that multifamily is more cost effective, but from my experience, community resistance to that is so high, regardless of the logic. The other thing that Drew talked about is the city of Lake Forest had the practice of buying affordable homes and fixing them up. They've quit. They've stopped doing it. It's gotten completely out of hand money-wise. And so originally, they had put 350,000. I mean, they're going to donate land on a lot of stuff, but they were putting 350,000 of money in this from their affordable housing trust, and they've upped it to $1 million simply because they're not spending the money buying single-family houses. As attractive as an alternative as that might be, from a conceptual standpoint, financially, it's just gotten out of reach.
I have a question, Paul. So today we were speaking about, Lake Forest has met success with a few units in Lake Forest where they buy a distressed house, fix it up, and sell it with a condition that
Yes.
the appreciation doesn't go up, and that house will go to the next family that
Yep.
needs it. I mean, that's a model that I really like. I mean, as opposed to giving the money to a different community, we could keep that to ourselves and build upon that and have a few families in town that could benefit from those models. Have you guys considered that?
Yeah, no, it's a very interesting model. Not only does it benefit residents, it potentially benefits people that work in the city or village that can't afford to live here. So it's a tremendous model. It's just priced itself out.
Yeah.
So those formerly affordable units that sort of became affordable during the COVID situation are not now available. So the other thing is these have to be brought up to ADA standards, new appliances. You know, if you partner with somebody like the outfit out of Libertyville, used to be Highland Park, Community Partners for Affordable Housing, wonderful organization, but the price of that model is just gotten really high. I mean, it's a good model. You know, Lake Forest frankly was able to slip affordable units into the community and nobody ever kind of really noticed. So, I mean, it has a lot of appeal, but the cost has gotten tremendous.
We might still have a possibility to get these units for ourselves. I know a few units on Washington, East Washington and North that
Right.
might qualify for that program.
Yeah.
What do you think?
It's timing, when it comes on the market and what's the pricing. And,
Yep.
yeah, I think when Lake Forest was doing it, it was post, 2008 downturn, and so they just had money sitting in
Yes.
coffers. And
Yep.
so they made some quick
And they-
purchases and.
Yep, and they'd had a lot of development, so they were sitting on a good chunk of money, so it was fortuitous. So I think one of the things that, I would suggest you think about is, I would encourage you to say, I'm not sure we're interested, but if we are interested, here's our conditions. And it is, we get a unit in the first pass of units, we get one. And then we are the second and fourth priorities for your list. And what would that cost? Would be kind of how I'd back into this.
I have a question for you, Paul, because you and I were trustees at the same time when that happened. I remember the village investing, I think, $45,000 to that extent to actually have access to a unit when they would be built. So I know that we made the check for that. So what happened to that? Because
I don't know anything about that.
I don't recall that either.
I'm pretty.
45,000. I think the number at the time was like 350 or something, and now it's 650 is the number that.
Well,
Kathy
probably
told me.
450 is the play number. I'm not speaking for Kathy, she needs to speak.
650 is the number she gave me.
Okay. I think you can work that down.
Yeah.
Plus or minus.
But I don't know what that would be.
The point is, the $45,000 were putting us on the list. And so I don't know what happened because
Yeah,
we're still
I
thinking
don't
about
either.
getting on the list. But I think that we already paid to be on the list. I'll look it up, okay?
Yeah, I honestly don't know.
What, I'm sorry, are you done? I want to make sure I'm not interrupting you. So I see the income limit of $50,000, right? That was half of the median is what they're using as the admissions. What is affordable? What does that mean? These are purchases, rentals? What is if your income is only 50,000, I'm used to a typical kind of senior apartment might be 30% of your income maximum or something.
These would be rentals.
These would be rentals, and is that what we use, 30%? Like, what's the maximum you could charge someone who makes $49,000 a year as a senior?
Yeah, I don't know. This is why the city of Lake Forest contracts with SEPA, they've got all this worked out to qualify for people. So you're asking
Okay.
a valid question. You're
Okay.
asking the answer to it, I just don't.
It's usually a percent is what I know. I have a senior relative now that's looking at this. In terms of the priority lines, I understand from a legal perspective, you can't exclude people from other communities, but you can create priority lists according to their status as a resident or a family of a resident, and down the list, including Lake Bluff. Is there one line, or would there be two lines with one line dedicated to our one unit?
So that had
And then it would flip to the Lake Forest, go through the Lake Forest, and then to the other lines, where the Lake Forest units are all Lake Forest, then Lake Bluff, then,
I know what you're saying, and that has come up in prior conversations. The thing that, and I know this is all very early stages, but the thing I think you need to be careful of is locking yourself into one unit, because it's possible you could have more units. If you ask for a unit right up front, and you're the second and fourth priority, and if we use the existing 5 cottages as a model, only 2 people there are Lake Forest residents. So theoretically, there's room if you've gotten your
Yeah.
priorities right.
it just depends on where we are in the priority list. because you, again, and nobody knows what this is yet, but if it's a Lake Forest resident, relative of Lake Forest resident, former resident, blah, 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 Lake Bluff, and then everyone else, then a family of Lake Bluff in that list, and that's the list, but then if we had a second list that for the one unit was Lake Bluff, and then all the Lake Forest, we're just flipping them with the remainder of the list being outside of the communities, right?
I understand, but
Okay.
I think, this is speculative, but my bet is you'll get more positions by not insisting that you
Okay.
just get one unit.
Okay,
You could do that.
okay,
You
But-
could do that, that's been discussed, and that might be easier to sell to your electorate. But the way this is working, I think you could place more residents or family members by not locking yourself into one unit.
okay. And then I guess
That
just
makes sense. to
and
me.
again, we're not deciding here, just the question is
Yes.
within that one list, where does Lake Bluff fall?
And I would argue that you should, obviously, there's a price for this argument, but you should shoot for second priority is Lake Bluff residents, fourth priority is, I'm sorry, Lake Bluff resident, yes. Fourth priority is family of Lake Bluff residents.
Okay, got it.
And then employees and everybody else is
In
behind.
exchange for our investment.
In exchange for your investment.
Okay,
Well,
And also ask for a unit right up front, irrespective of everything, you get one unit right up front.
I had asked for a list of, and I haven't received it yet, list of persons already signed up. How many Lake Bluffers are waiting on the list?
So that's an excellent question. It is a tricky one. We deliberately have not talked about this because we felt like we'd be creating expectations that couldn't be met. Just before COVID, we thought this was in the bag, and then COVID just railed everything, and the prices almost doubled. So we've been very judicious about not trying to create expectations that we couldn't meet. But that's the question. Are there people on that list that, are we talking about real people here or speculative people?
so circling back, I'm sorry, to the rental, we don't know exactly what the
Rents are,
rent would be. But whatever it is, it would be the same as if we built rental units in Lake Bluff, because it's set by the state, correct?
Correct.
Or federal, okay, all right,
Correct.
okay. The only question is would we build the same type of units? Would we renovate houses? Would it be
Right.
cheaper to renovate units here? But the cost to a senior would be the same in either community. I was
Correct.
just making sure there wasn't a definition of affordability that was Lake Forest affordability
Oh.
and Lake Bluff affordability.
Yeah, no.
So,
Good
okay.
question.
And the last thing is, could you explain to me the trust in Lake Forest? What is that, and where does the funding for the senior or affordable housing trust come from?
Sure. Drew had spoken to that before. So the city of Lake Forest passed an affordable housing ordinance, and they charge developers, either the developer has to include affordable housing in their development or give money in lieu of, and they've had a mixture of
Gotcha.
things go on.
Gotcha. Got it.
Mostly it's money in lieu of, but there have been a few
course.
cases where they provide a few units and then plus money in lieu of.
And we have no such trust in
No,
Lake
correct.
Forest. So if we could consider establishing such a trust, should there be a large development in town that wanted to be considered for rapid approval,
Yes.
they could add money to that trust.
Yes.
or some affordable units.
Or some affordable units, just an item.
Highland Park has the same type of trust. They were the first ones before Lake Forest. They did it a couple decades ago now, I think. And they also did-
Those trusts only apply to residential construction, right? You can't put money from a commercial
I think that's right.
trust. Okay.
Just so you know, I'm looking at the Community Partners for Affordable Housing. They have units for rent right now. There's a 2-bedroom in Evanston, monthly rate of 2-bedroom inclusionary housing, 2 beds, 1 bath, $1,400 a month. There's a Deerfield 2-bedroom unit, $1,725 a month.
Are these affordable units as you're looking at? Yeah, because I don't know the way it works in Illinois, but for my family in Michigan, it was a % of their income, capped.
It's the same in other states where for large development, I think they have to put on the side 3% of the units to be affordable. And for these units, it's based on your salary and a percentage of your salary for, and so you might end up being in a very expensive development, for you need that $400 a month.
Right.
Simple enough.
But it's a chunk of, it's a same chunk of your income as someone else living there probably. You know, 30% or 50% or whatever it is.
Yes, for people, and you want the people, your teachers, your police
Mm-hmm.
workers, to be in your community.
Yeah, I agree. Okay. That's all I have. Thank you.
Police officers, sorry.
Yeah. Workforce housing is the phrase.
Workforce housing.
On the one hand, it's makes sense for us to continue to pursue this because it is at least movement in the right direction. I suppose that that's one reason why each time this comes up, we continue to consider it. It's just, it feels so minuscule in terms of the expectation of the state, first of all, which sometimes is mandatory or sometimes is not so mandatory. It's not really clear. But it seems like such a drop in the bucket to be talking about it. However, if what Mr. Lemieux is saying is right in terms of the numbers, there's some availability. There might be some availability for Lake Bluff folks to be able to take advantage of this if we were involved.
It is a, I'm sorry, it is a one-time cost, right? The ongoing maintenance and repair of the facilities is,
I mean, obviously that's to be worked out, but the concept right now is one time.
okay.
So that the rents they charge are designed, yes.
Okay, all right, got it.
Under the Affordable Housing Act, that the village could negotiate as one of the, I guess, conditions of us investing would be to say, this counts towards the village. You would agree to make this a village affordable housing unit. If the community agrees to it, you can do that and get credit for it.
Right. So the question is, what's that number? To get what we would
Well,
want?
so that, I mean, I'm making notes for going back to try to get like an à la carte menu, like tell me what this costs, and,
What Mr. Lemieux was saying makes a lot of sense, that we upfront a single one, and then we are second in priority to Lake Forest residents, and then fourth in priority to Lake Forest family members. So in terms of
for all units.
for all units,
Existing
yeah.
and new,
Right,
and that we would ask for a credit, and that, what else would be important for the village to ask for? That seems like a lot.
Okay,
The thing to think about here, somebody had to kind of focus me on this. I think I heard the kind of drop in the bucket. You know,
Yeah.
that applies a couple of ways, but I was kind of being balky about the cost based on whatever it turns out to be 6 or 8 or 10 or 12 units. And they said that, you know, think about it over an 80 to 100 year period, how many residents are we serving
Yeah.
in that period of time? So I had to kind of reorient myself to say it isn't just we're dropping residents in here at one point in time if you know, hopefully it goes on for a while.
that's a good point.
Do you know the average stay of a tenant?
You know, I think it's about 7 or 8 years. I think Kathy has that number. There's one resident there now that's been there for 20 years, but most of the other ones have been there in the 4 to 7 range.
and something I'm misunderstanding is there's 5 cottages now on this property, and what we're talking about is a building additional? Is that,
So the other properties are, and I don't know Lake Forest that well, but they're on Telegraph.
I see.
So they're sort of, they're gonna be like diagonal from this. This other property sits at the corner of Everett and 43. So they're in very close proximity.
I see, so there's no cottages in that new development area that was on our packet, I see.
Do they have a long-range plan for more units over the next 10 years? Do they have does Lake Forest have a long-range affordable senior housing plan for the next 10 years?
I don't know that they do, no.
They haven't identified properties, like here's where the next one will go and the next one.
No, as far as I know, that, now Kathy would be the person to ask about that. I haven't, that has never come up, O'Brien. I've never heard that discussed, and I would have thought it would have come up in the process of these conversations.
It kind of occurs to me that if, we're spending money and this looks like a way to go for us rather than doing it ourselves, that if we knew that over the next 10
The
years.
next opportunity is 10
Yeah.
years from now, or
Oh, whenever.
Right, exactly. Just
Yeah.
trying to phase it in. It's like, okay, if it's $100,000, $200,000, $300,000, $400,000, and we're investing in this and it seems to work out well for us, we've kind of got a roadmap. If not, I think we should be looking at our own trust
Yeah.
and setting up a plan to develop in Lake Bluff.
I take it that the trust has been discussed before, right? Then we have not done it. We're much smaller, obviously, than Highland Park and Lake Forest in terms of the numbers of units and therefore the number of opportunities. But it's been considered and rejected before, doing something like that? Or no?
I don't know if it came up with the building of the original affordable housing plan, but it has not come up in the amendments thereto.
Right.
It must not be a panacea.
I mean, it's not a panacea, but again, I just go back to the Highland Park example. At that time, they also had and I don't know if Lake Forest has this, a demolition fee that would also fund the trust. And so if you were gonna tear down a single-family residence, you had to pay a demolition fee, even if you were gonna rebuild that single-family residence to not be affordable, just rebuild it, because it was the lost opportunity. And then you would have a demolition fee and the fee would go into the trust as well. It was just another funding source.
It's just development. I don't think they tapped on that.
Right. So Highland Park they were raising significant money and they built, structures for affordable housing.
Should we have a cow or some sort of investigative into this, just to make it an item to talk about for?
Yeah, that makes sense.
I agree with that. I'm sorry, maybe I shouldn't speak, but the point is, this is a drop in the bucket, and contributing money to Lake Forest is actually contributing money to Lake Forest, not to Lake Bluff, where we will send people to live somewhere else, literally. And so the idea of not doing better and more than that, creating a trust so that we can build upon what we do to actually, what I've heard the most is people want to stay here. They want to downsize and stay here. How do we do that? And the prices don't cooperate, but those ideas of trust, of a demolition fee, of where we can actually keep people in town, and when that person leaves town, then the next person can come in town with the same condition is absolutely great.
Yeah. The only thing I think about is that, if we go down that path, we could be looking at 5-6 years before first, affordable rental units are available in Lake Bluff. In the meantime, it would be nice to have some ability for Lake Bluff residents, seniors, or whoever to be able to, to be honest with you, if let's say you were bringing in a resident who wanted to sell their house and just stay in the area, Lake Forest isn't too far. If you had an elderly relative that you wanted to bring in closer to you who had low income. So it's just an idea.
I'm trying to remember, the village had community partners for affordable housing come in and give a presentation. I'm trying to remember, it's probably within the last 36 months. They came in and shared and we talked about this to some degree.
Okay.
But we didn't get an in-depth dive of what were all the funding mechanisms and sources, and didn't talk about or share what an inclusionary zoning ordinance looks like. So we can revisit that if you want to talk about this some more, so we can fully understand all the alternatives on the table and what that could involve. And
it sounds like there's a number of communities on the North Shore have these trusts. So
I know you probably consider this, but one of the things that's always been in the back of my mind is the funding technique is a minimal transfer tax, property transfer tax. Lake Forest has it, as far as I know, nobody bitches about it. I think it's 1%, it isn't huge, but it does generate maybe kind of numbers you're looking to generate, because developments in our community are not gonna occur like they've occurred in the past on Lake Forest, so.
Sure.
Maybe they will, I don't know.
Well, and all this is interesting in light of, you know, the build agenda downstate, you know, the idea of what could happen with some of this.
Yeah,
From the governor's office and other, from the legislatures, so.
yeah. Are we getting ahead of that if we do this? Okay. Subject of another meeting.
Well, we can't go too far afield in this meeting, but
Do you think we're clear?
so far. But it does seem to me a cow on affordable housing on which this is an element to be discussed and understood, and the trade-offs, possibilities of options, I think would be time well spent.
We are on the verge of bringing back to the board the village's affordable housing plan. We've been working with the state on that to get that. They had some comments on our last plan that they viewed that were inconsistent with the act, and we're meeting with them this week to bring that back. So that could be done.
I have a question, because we are speaking about three different things: workforce housing, affordable housing, senior housing. So, and we're also talking about a trust that would power the fact that we can acquire units across the village to become affordable for different types of people. What are we speaking about here? Senior, affordable, or a workforce?
What is the unit that we're talking about in Lake Forest? That's senior.
Senior affordable, it's senior affordable, right?
Senior affordable.
Uh-huh.
So would that be open to a working teacher or just to someone over age 60, whatever?
If they met the age qualification, they could be there. So one of the cottages is an elder, I shouldn't say elderly, but older, age qualified, Lake Forest employee.
Okay.
So, and as I recall, the 10 Java acres, the most recent discussion that we had about that, where it was senior affordable. That's who we were talking about. But it was also apartments, not cottages, or not just duplexes, as I recall, right?
3 stories.
3 stories. Because to do anything, I mean, what's noticeable about this project is it's on.
Low volume.
It's very low volume. And
To the point made earlier by Mr. Lemieux about multifamily projects.
it just will not go anywhere.
We got pretty close.
Well, and I mean, and that's by design, you know, seniors don't want to walk down long hallways, right? They want to go vertical and take an elevator and walk a short
Sure.
distance. And that's why vertical makes sense for that
Yeah.
population and bumps up against other friction points.
Interesting. Okay,
We can give at an upcoming committee of the whole meeting, when we talk about the village's affordable housing plan, changes to that, we can also give and provide an overview of affordable housing and attainable housing programs that have had success so far,
that would be interesting.
and talk about also what an inclusionary ordinance would look like. Deerfield has had a lot of success with affordable housing. And I think it's been market-driven. I mean,
So all we need is like 5 times the populations.
Right.
And 5 times the square footage and,
Village, like Bluff tries to be very aspirational with this postage stamp that we have.
right. How was it that the proposal that we considered, the 10-acre proposal that we considered came to be? Like, that just landed our doorstep? Did we
The village
solicit
issued
it?
RFP originally.
I thought, yeah. Yeah, and we got one answer, one
There were
response?
several developers at the time interested, and the village kept adding requirements to the project, increasing demands. And one of the bigger sticking points was the ambulance services for these facilities. That was always a difficult one because the village subsidizes ambulance runs. And so that was a worry, and the answer from every developer operator was, we'll buy you an ambulance. Well, that's okay for that, but it's easy to buy one and you gotta run it, right? That's the rub. And the rule of thumb was one ambulance trip per door per year. That was kind of the general rule of thumb for any development like that. And so there was concern with our volunteer fire department at the time about how could we adequately service a development of that nature.
I have a question for that actually, and that might be for Paul as well. So great, senior housing, but what are the, in Lake Forest, but what are the medical services that would be provided for these independent units, independent living units?
You'd ask what municipal services?
Yes, I mean, what kind of, I mean, that we know that if I get into a unit as being pretty independent and I'm there for the next 4 to 7 years to 20 years, I will require more and more medical services. So what is their plan for that need for the community?
That's a good question for Kathy Cerniak, but peripherally, my understanding is they see it as so incremental that it isn't an issue. Now, it was an issue when they built Lake Forest Place. I think they requested, what, 2 ambulances or 3 ambulances? So there was a lot of financial consideration for the issue that you're talking about. But I think when they're talking about adding 6 to 12 units, I don't think they see that incremental number of runs as being consequential. It has never come up, I'll put it that way.
Thank you.
Okay. We have decided that this is a bigger issue than one unit in Lake Forest will resolve. However, it is, I think, still worth pursuing, especially if it isn't the single unit, but priority that we can purchase, priority for our residents that we can also purchase. It's worth continuing to look into, but I guess as I'm thinking about where to spend our money, I need to know more about what's in the realm of possible in terms of other solutions. And it's not the best solution, but maybe it's the best achievable solution. Which is maybe where we end up. But with that being said, that is it for our agenda, unless anyone has anything else to add. Oh,
Yes, what kind of timing are we talking about for that request? Do we have timeline? If we continue working on that, we might go for a long time.
As the treasurer that has to come up with, I keep asking that same question, when do I have to have this money available? I think a lot of it, and again, when Drew talks to Kathy, he'll have more insight. I think a lot of it has to do with the sale of the tax credits. So I think that is really going to be the trigger. So a bunch of things have to be lined up. So I similarly, as a treasurer, had gotten sick of holding this money out of the market and was about to reinvest it and was told, no, this is likely to happen in about the six to 9 months. So that's
And how long ago was that?
about 3.
3.
Actually, no, probably.
I would just close with a historical comment. I was on the board when we were looking at the Jawa site, and it got far enough that I flew out to Virginia to tour the developers' existing sites to see that they were up to snuff if we were gonna have them built here. So it was a very long discussion. There was a very long discussion with the representatives from the West Terrace on the board, the height of the buildings, getting them down to an acceptable level, and unfortunately, at the very end, it looked hopeful, but it just did not go through.
and perhaps it's a long story, but why didn't it go through?
I think it is a long story. I think there were other interested parties. I think there was last minute negotiations done at the time, but it was so close.
I see what I've seen over time is that, Brian, tell me if I'm wrong, but I think there's always some hesitation when the village is gonna give up an asset like those 10 acres. It's like you get one shot.
Yeah,
And there was, I think, some struggle with that. Not that they didn't like the project, but it's kind of like, is this the only thing? Is this the best thing? And
Yeah, like I said, it got very close, and that
Yeah.
developer at the time did work very hard to get the scale of the units
Yeah,
down to
yeah.
satisfy the West
there was
Terrace
architectural
people.
study done.
Yeah, the height over the trees and all that stuff. And they were a very quality developer. When I went out to see their units, these were something we would have enjoyed having here, quality.
For point, this is 2008, because I just came
Yeah.
out when I was coming
Yes.
tail end of that. It's like, oh, yeah, yeah.
It's under the other French president.
not Macron. Okay, so any other comments regarding this or any other issues for the Finance Committee today, June 22nd, 2026? Do I have a motion to adjourn this meeting?
So moved.
Second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? The meeting is adjourned.
No, I have some dinner.
Yeah, you're right, you're right, you're right.